welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentation. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get rolling.
All right, thanks, Jess. We are really looking forward to this event today. So we are in a disaster recovery and backup in the cloud MegaCast. We've got a great lineup of companies ready to talk to you today. We've got Veeam, we've got Rubrik, and we've got Crash Plan. In addition to being informative, some of these sessions are also going to be pretty fun. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great one. So if you don't know me already, my name is Scott Becker. I'm helping Jess today. She's one of our other moderators. Keith Ward is also on hand. Plus, we're going to have a guest appearance by our OG moderator, David Davis, who's going to give us a keynote here in a minute. But now, as Jess mentioned, we've got some grand prizes today, and I want to go through those right now. We have 5 Apple iPad Airs. Those are beautiful devices. You get to pick your color if you're a winner. And then in addition, there's a $300 Amazon gift card going out every 30 minutes. Just mentioned some of the prize terms and conditions. You must be in live attendance to qualify. And I will be announcing the winners live here on the event. And if you do want to see more of the prize terms and conditions, you can scroll down in your handout section. And one other thing that I just wanted to reiterate while we're talking about prizes is those best question $50 Amazon gift cards. So we have 3 sessions happening today. Each session has a $50 best question gift card giveaway. Now, those aren't announced live during the event. We look at all the questions that came in throughout the event and pick that winner after the event is over and then contact them now. But don't forget about that. I'll remind you as we go, that you've got a shot at that question, really, or that prize. Really, the point of that is to just encourage you to ask those questions. You know you want to ask them. This gives you one more reason to ask those questions. All right, so let's get into today's great content. As I mentioned, Actual Tech moderator David Davis has a great keynote for us today about disaster recovery and backup in the cloud. So I am going to turn things over to David.
Hello, everyone out there on the MegaCast. David Davis here, excited to be back on the event. Today's topic is disaster recovery and backup in the cloud. If you're not using the cloud for disaster recovery, at a minimum, it's time to seriously consider it. And we've got a lot of points here to talk about. Top 5 reasons to consider disaster recovery and backup in the cloud. That is the title of my quick chat here today on the MegaCast keynote. So, I want to first point out that it's important to use disaster recovery in the cloud because there's just so many benefits. Starting off with making sure that your data is offsite. You want to get that resiliency. If your headquarters location is hit by a tornado or a hurricane or a fire, of course, let's hope that none of those things happen. You need to make sure that your data is offsite. So that's just the number one reason to use disaster recovery in the cloud. It makes for an amazing offsite storage location for your company's digital gold, the critical backup data. And of course, you also want to make sure that you have data redundancy on premises. I always want to point that out because you never know when you're going to be hit by ransomware, and you might be able to recover quickly on premises, but if not, you always can recover back to the cloud. Number 2 reason, scalability and flexibility. If you have a disaster on site or a ransomware infection, you need to recover those servers. You need to do it rapidly. And you need to have flexibility. And that's exactly what the cloud provides. You can scale up 1, 10, 100, 1,000 instances in the cloud, get your applications back up and running, and you only pay for what you use. So I love that sort of agility that the cloud provides. And then there's, of course, automation and orchestration. These types of features, built into many cloud data protection offerings can help to ensure that not only is your data protected, but that it also has the integrity that you need. You need to have that assurance, that confidence that when you flip the switch and you turn on your critical servers running in the cloud, that they're actually going to work, right? You don't want to think that you have your data only to find out that you have corruption, or only to find out that these applications don't really work when they're tested. And that brings up another point, testing. That automation is all about constant, never-ending testing of your backup data and your critical applications. And then we have cost optimization. I mean, I talked about you only pay for what you use when it's in the cloud, and that's the great thing about it. Automation solutions built into these data protection tools can ensure that you're archiving off data or purging data, that's no longer needed by your company based on your company's compliance policies. And then finally, monitoring. You want to ensure that if you are hit by a ransomware infection and your data is being rapidly changed, rapidly encrypted, those sort of ransomware events or mass encryption events can be quickly identified, and you can take action immediately. And you also need, I'll throw this in, the rapid testing and automation to ensure that you can bring up all of your critical applications. I mean, it's easy to do a simple 3-tiered application recovery test and check the box and say that it works. But what if you had to restore every single server you have and perhaps every single desktop you have and do it in the cloud? How long is that going to take? And that's one of the many challenges that companies have run into when they try to recover with local tools. And yet another reason to consider disaster recovery and backup in the cloud. So there's 5, maybe 10 reasons and benefits to consider disaster recovery and backup in the cloud. On the event today, we've got some awesome solutions. Let's see, we'll hear about solutions from our friends over at Veeam, Rubrik, and CrashPlan, some of the most innovative companies in the world of data protection and disaster recovery today. So again, it's been an honor to be on the MegaCast. I'm David Davis. You can follow me on Twitter, David M. Davis, and I'll chat with you there. Have a great day and enjoy the event.
All right. Thanks, David. Great stuff. Appreciate you under-promising and over-delivering with promising 5 and then giving us a few more items there. Really appreciate it. So we do have a poll question up here for everybody. What's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? And we're looking for, whether that's less than 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 1 to 2 years, or not sure. So I'll just leave that up for a minute to give everyone an opportunity to let us know just where you are in your process, and it helps us tailor the content for you. Venkat, we appreciate the shout out to David. The other was and Jody and Jeffrey. Thanks to all 3 of you for chiming in on David's keynote. I agree. Lots of great insights there. Great info. It was really fantastic. Okay. Well, thanks to everybody who has answered the poll. I'm just going to leave that up there for a 5 count. So I'll count down. That's how long you've got to answer this one. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and I see some people sneaking in. 1. All right. We're going to leave it there and get rolling with our event here. So our first session is from Veeam, and we've got Sam Nichols, who's Director of Public Cloud Product Marketing at Veeam. Sam always has great presentations. I'm really looking forward to what Sam has to say. Sam, take it away.
Okay, well, thanks for that introduction and welcome everyone. In the spirit and the theme of DR and backup in the cloud, what I wanted to do was really translate this into differing cloud maturities. Before we dive in, my name's Sam Nichols, Director of Public Cloud at Veeam Software, so I have the fun job of looking after pretty much anything and everything that we do across the three major hyperscalers, so AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. And I think, looking at this through the cloud maturity lens is really, really important. Like, we see so much research out there that is looking at kind of how folks' environments are looking like today. Are they, in a hybrid model or a multi-cloud model? And, the vast majority of folks are. 94% of organizations are operating in this hybrid and multi-cloud model now. But it's really like a scale, right? It's not just like one day you're on premises and the next day you're hybrid. It is this constant journey, this constant adaptation as you start to do different things with the cloud. So let's just break that down a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is actually show you a real world customer with a real world architecture with real world outcomes on how Veeam helped facilitate them, not only, digitally transform, adapt, migrate to the cloud, but also do that very efficiently, very cost effectively, do it in a very, very secure manner, and then also make sure that they are not locked into one specific platform. So looking at these different cloud maturities, I think like very, very few folks are in this legacy model now, right? It's that 6%, the antithesis of what I mentioned earlier, where, primarily on premises with legacy systems. Legacy is a bit of a strong word, but, there's still some folks out there with mainframe, physical, and even virtualized workloads. But the big point here is that they have no cloud applications or footprint and maybe no definitive plans right now to adopt any sort of cloud services in the near future. They are 100% on premises, and that's fine, and they're happy like that. Next up is the opportunistic folks. So they start having this sporadic utilization of public cloud, right? Primarily, we see that as a backup target. We've got, multiple different tiers of object storage available across, all the different vendors, not just AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, that offer this seemingly infinitely scalable backup target that can be ridiculously cost effective and take away what was a capital expenditure on premises to something that's more manageable as an operational expenditure, billed monthly in arrears. We also see a number of folks then starting to use software as a service, right? Microsoft 365 has been growing massively. Of course, that was been fueled by the whole work from home culture over the last 3.5 years, but other software as a service applications like Salesforce are out there as well. And then maybe they do have a few infrastructure or maybe even infrastructure as a service or even platform as a service, utilizations within their organizations. Probably infrastructure as a service, virtual machines, instances, Amazon EC2, Azure VMs, Google Cloud Compute Engine VMs that are running in a very, very similar method to the way they were on premises. But still lacking this definitive approach to efficient cloud utilization, because efficiency is absolutely key if we're going to kind of avoid any sort of overspend or bill shock. Next up, we've got the systematic folks, and this is kind of like where I'm seeing the majority of Veeam customers right now is in that systematic place. They've got this repeatable, well-defined utilization of cloud services, right? They are starting to lift and shift their three-tiered monolithic applications from on-premises and run them in a very similar method on public cloud resources. And then they're implementing some forms of monitoring and analytics for a measured approach, right? Trying to stay on top of costs, detecting ransomware and malware, that kind of thing. But this is where I see a number of customers now. And then finally, we've got the optimized folks, right? So these are, typically cloud first or born in the cloud organizations. This is where I see a number of customers now. And then finally, we've got the optimized folks, right? So these are, typically cloud first or born in the cloud organizations. They've got cloud native utilization per their company requirements. So they're going serverless. They're using microservices. So, getting rid of servers and opting for functions as a service that are referencing reference data that are in, databases or file shares or object storage or even containerized workloads like Kubernetes. that they're federating the management, the observability, and the governance across their hybrid and multi-cloud. They're not using multiple different tool sets from multiple different vendors, but they're also not trying to fit square pegs in round holes. They are using purpose-built backup and recovery tools from a single vendor that can be managed in a single interface across the entirety of their environment. And then they're proactively maintaining and optimizing that, these day two operations for things like security, cost, and inter-cloud operability, right? Very infrequently, seldomly do we see folks that are standardized on a single cloud and a single cloud only. We are seeing more and more folks go deliberately for that multi-cloud approach, right? And I think that used to be, I don't want to use the word mistake. It's just something that they came across, right? Business Unit A preferred AWS because it offered XYZ service that they need, but Business Unit B went with Azure because it offered DEF service that they need. That was kind of stumbled upon, but now it's a strategic thought process to go multi-cloud, to not put all of your eggs in one basket and be able to eliminate any sort of platform lock-in or lock-out. And that's kind of really where Veeam steps into play, right? Everyone knows us for, pioneering that purpose-built VMware native backup and recovery solution. That's kind of what's grown us to be the #1 modern data protection and ransomware recovery platform over the last 16 years, more than 400,000 customers. But it's not just virtualized workloads that we protect, right? So yes, we do vSphere, Hyper-V, AHV, RHV. We kind of went back and delivered what a number of folks wanted, which were agents for their physical Windows and Linux boxes. But most recently, over the last 4 or 5 years or so, we've really focused on that cloud piece, right? So delivering native agentless protection for Amazon EC2, RDS, EFS, the VPCs, Azure VMs, Azure SQL, Azure Files, Google Cloud Compute Engine, Google Cloud for MySQL and for PostgreSQL, containerized workloads managed by Kubernetes. Like, all of this is achievable using Veeam under a single portfolio of products that is centrally managed. We're also very cognizant of how critical backup and recovery, secure backup and recovery, has become in any sort of robust cybersecurity initiative, right? We've basically got a plethora of attacks, an unlimited number of attacks happening on our environments all day, every day. And the bad actors only have to be right once to get in, whereas us, we're expected to be perfect. We've got to keep them out 100% of the time. And that, perfection isn't always achievable. So having that secure backup and recovery as part of your security strategy is critical. So if, in fact, it's mostly a case of when there is a successful attack on your environment or environments, you have, the integrity of your backups to recover from, so you can get back to business operations as quick as possible. Another big thing we're seeing is folks wanting to improve their total cost of ownership in the public cloud, right? It's a very different model. It's pay as you go, build in arrears, but things like bill shock and overspend, are named for a reason. So we see folks wanting to properly protect their environment, but do that with as minimal cost footprint as possible. So they're not kind of spending all of their money on backup and recovery operations. They're freeing up that capital to go and invest in more transformative initiatives that might align with that optimized tier. And then again, that cross-platform portability, where a workload lives now, who knows where it's going to live in the future. Veeam's focused on being as minimally prescriptive, zero prescriptive approach as possible with regards to your data locality. We'll deliver you the tool set to migrate, backup, recover, move your workloads across any of these environments, right? It's this data, this app mobility, cloud mobility. And then we also deliver the licensing structure to do that as well. So you don't have to go out and procure a new piece of software, a new license. You don't have an old license that just gets wasted. It will just dynamically and automatically move with your workloads as you kind of transition through this cloud maturity. So I wanted to show you this in practice. So it's a real world architecture with some real world outcomes. And this is an organization that was using Veeam for their 3 different data centers that were geographically distributed across the United States. They had essentially a host of virtual machines on all of them with Veeam backup and replication, performing backups to storage within those locations. But as they started to grow into the cloud, one of the first things that they did was utilize us for backup copy jobs, tiering workloads to Amazon S3 object storage. And the reason why they would do that is, firstly, it's great for the 3-2-1 adherence, right? 3 copies of your data, 2 different media, 1 offsite. The AWS environment, the S3 bucket up there, is their offsite. It's a different type of media. But it's also from a low cost retention perspective. This is a healthcare company. They are mandated to keep records for a very long period of time. And being able to do that across these multiple different tiers of S3 that can go down to fractions of a cent per gigabyte per month really helps eliminate that overspend. Meet those long-term retention requirements. Don't blow up the bill. The next part of their journey was really like, okay, well, how can we start to get out of the data center business and more into the cloud? So they chose to firstly, grow within AWS, and they spun up a production account within AWS, and we'll get into the difference between a production and a backup account in a second. They also opted for a colo data center and then also Azure with their production subscription there, and then used the very same tool that they've been using for backup and recovery to start to migrate their data centers to the cloud. Obviously, this didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of time, but some of the workloads went to AWS, living on EC2. Some went to the co-location, other went into Azure as Azure VMs, as well as managed SQL instances. But at that point, once everything was migrated, they achieved their goal. Let's get out of the data center business. And really the key benefit here is, firstly, extracting the value of Veeam. We're a backup and recovery product. We create copies of data. You can use that to migrate data. You can take the production fresh data that is in your backups and migrate it cross-platform like we spoke earlier. And that really meant they didn't have to go out and procure and learn new different tooling, or they didn't have to go out and procure professional services. They just used the licensing and the product that they already had to perform that. They deprecated their data centers. Of course, that's a transformation from CapEx to OpEx. That frees up more capital for more innovation. Being a healthcare company, that ultimately drives better patient outcomes. And then this is the explanation around that production account and backup account. It's de-risking the access to backup data. You need logical separation in the public cloud. Do not put all production and backup data in a single account. If it becomes compromised, you're going to have nothing to recover from. Always make sure you have a dedicated backup account in AWS, subscription in Azure, it's a project in Google, and make sure that you are backing up to that with least privilege access between the production account or accounts and that backup account. And then the next stage that they went through was ultimately the federation of all of these different environments with cross-platform portability. So where does Veeam come into play here? We've got the main Veeam backup and replication server actually living in Azure. We've got some VBR workers living at the co-location, and then we have our cloud-native appliances deployed in each cloud. So we've got Veeam backup for AWS, in AWS, Azure, in Azure, of course. And all of these are connected with one another to give that single interface, that one throat to choke, but with purpose-built backup and recovery. The next step they took was, okay, where are we going to back up our co-location to? AWS was there. Actually, that's not the next step. I'm going to bring it up anyway. But AWS was their location of choice. So the backups that they take of on-premises are being backed up to S3. Obviously, with V12 now, you don't have to stage that on-premises storage and do a copy job or a tiering job. You can go directly to object storage now if you like. The other piece was around a security initiative, though, and that was making these buckets immutable. So we do support Amazon S3 object lock, as well as immutability for Azure Blob Storage, putting data in a write once, read many format to make sure that, if anyone ever were to get in, they cannot corrupt, encrypt, or delete the data that lives in the backups. And then this is where it starts to get really interesting, provided I know where these next arrows are going to come up. No, I spoke ahead of myself again. They do use Veeam, though, to protect these workloads in AWS and Azure. So these cloud-native appliances are ultimately initially orchestrating native snapshots agentlessly of these workloads, and then those snapshots, an image-based backup of them is created, compressed, and then stored on the object storage within that respective cloud, again in a different account. So we do that for a security perspective, but also this is incredibly cost effective, right? If we look at AWS, for example, the EBS volumes that snapshots live on are priced at 5 cents per gigabyte per month. Those are the list prices. Object storage, the most expensive object storage option, is less than half of that. And if you go right down to things like Glacier Deep Archive, you're dealing with fractions of a cent per gigabyte per month. So you can very, very cost effectively retain that data without having to manage any sort of and pay for any very expensive snapshots. So really improving that TCO story. And the next slide will show how that is. But what's really interesting is that cross-platform portability of this, and it's going to start to look a little bit confusing. But what they are doing is they are then taking copies of those backups that live in their Amazon S3 buckets and put them in Blob. And the ones that are of their Azure VMs are being, yes, backed up to Azure Blob, but then also over to AWS. And what's really, really important for this is it's helping them adhere to the 3-2-1 rule. It's helping them adhere to compliance requirements where, you know, in healthcare industry, HIPAA states you must be able to recover to a new location, whether that's a different region, a different cloud platform, or on premises. Veeam is really giving them all the tools and licensing schema that they need to do that how they want to, and really just eliminate any sort of platform lock-in or lock-out. So it's very, very interesting to see. And the main question that I get asked on this is, well, what are their egress fees like? There are no egress fees because they're utilizing things like Direct Connect and ExpressRoute to eliminate egress fees. Yes, it is deemed as a cross-regional traffic, so there is a component to that, but it's certainly not egress fees. So ultimately, what are they achieving? It's, that federated management. They have centralized the management, the observability, the monitoring, reporting, and ultimately the portability of their data across these three very, very different environments, right? And they're using native tooling for each and every single environment to be as productive as possible. Ransomware ready, right? I mentioned the immutability component. Critical putting that data in that write once, read many state. More and more attackers are targeting backups because they have caught on to the fact people are not paying me my ransom because they're just recovering from a clean backup. Put the data in an immutable state so they cannot change, encrypt, delete that, right? Even the root account cannot do that. Also really important is encryption, both in flight and at rest. Ransomware first started 10 plus years ago. And what were they doing? They were exfiltrating data. They were finding data in production on backup systems and then saying, if you do not pay this ransom, I will take this sensitive data, whether it's PII, PHI, and put it out everywhere. So utilizing encryption like AWS KMS, Azure Key Vault is critical in order to de-risk that and really prepare you for ransomware. And then finally, the big one is an ultra low total cost of ownership. This organization's doing 500 terabytes of daily backups across the platforms, as we showed earlier, with just a $20K monthly spend. So it's a lot of data going in a lot of different places, stored for a lot of time, and at just a $20K monthly spend. So huge outcome for them. We are running out of time, so any questions that I see in the chat, I'm going to reply there. What I did want to leave you with is a new initiative that we've just launched called our Cloud Labs. We have them available for AWS and Azure. They are coming soon for Google Cloud. But these Cloud Labs are a place where you can get hands-on experience in a real-world AWS or Azure environment, right? So you would... And essentially what we're doing here is teaching you best practices that we've just spoken about for when it comes to backup and recovery. Everything is self-paced. It's fully guided. You can do it in your own time. It's completely free to you. You can go in there and completely destroy it if you like. When the lab's over, the lab's over. So go in, play around with these. You've got the short URLs here, but we've also got some QR codes for you there. Sign up for them. Have a play around, completely free, very, very easy, very interesting to do. Build up that degree of confidence. And then we do also have freemium editions after that, which will allow you to go out and protect up to 10 AWS or 10 Azure instances absolutely free with Veeam. So I do want to say thank you for having me today. Transition it back to the hosts. I hope to see you on a webinar soon, and I'll start answering those questions now.
All right, great. Thanks, Sam. Great stuff. And yeah, there are a lot of questions in there for you. We've got a ton of great questions from the audience. And I do have the poll up here just about additional information that you'd like about the Veeam solution. And you can see there's all kinds of options there, from data sheets to technical white papers to customer case studies, pricing details, and on and on. Also, don't forget about the handout section in your console. There are resources there from all our presenters today. Veeam has a hybrid cloud backup guide. There's a link there to that great resource. So check that out. I did really appreciate that cloud maturity framework. That was really interesting with the legacy and the opportunistic and systematic and optimized, and appreciate seeing how Veeam slots in at each of those levels, and that optimization level with the lock-in, lock-out, egress. Really interesting stuff. And I see from the questions that a lot of you guys were interested in that as well. I'm going to go ahead and leave the poll question up here while we get to our first prize drawing of the day. So every 30 minutes, we're giving away a $300 gift card to Amazon. So we've got one of those to give away here. And this first one is for Lynn Nicholas from Massachusetts. Lynn Nicholas from Massachusetts. Congratulations, Lynn. And then we've also got one of our grand prizes to give away. So today we're giving away 5 Apple iPad Airs. And the first one of the day is going to Russell Morris from Ohio. Russell Morris from Ohio. So congratulations, Russell. And on the gift card, congratulations, Lynn. And we've got a lot more to give away as we move forward today. All right. I see a lot of you have selected the resources that you'd be interested in receiving from Veeam. So I'm going to go ahead and close down that poll. And we're going to roll right along into our next session. And this is a big one. We've got a lot of people from Rubrik today to explain some things about disaster recovery and backup with Rubrik. So it's a star-studded cast here. We've got Aaron Carmel, Mike Preston, Drew Russell, and Rodney Sharich. But I'm going to turn things over to Drew to get us rolling.
To the session on hardening your Microsoft 365 data protection. My name's Drew. I'm part of our practice focused around all things SaaS and Microsoft 365. Today, I'm joined by a few of the folks that I like to bug on a almost daily basis. We have Rodney from Microsoft, and then we also are being joined from Mike and Iran from Rubrik. Hope talk about some of the new demos we have, some of the new UI capabilities, as well as some of our upcoming roadmap items. So let's jump into what we're going to talk about today from an agenda perspective. First and foremost, we'll review some of the latest and greatest threats that are happening in the 365 world. Feels like at this point, almost every day we're seeing new and novel attacks across the platform. Really what that comes back to is how popular of a tool it is, right? It's so heavily utilized across the board, quickly becoming one of its most targeted platforms across the globe these days. Then directly in line with that, we'll talk about some of the key questions you can ask in those attack situations. How do I respond to it? What are the industries associated with these attacks? How they play out, different things like that. And then from there, we'll turn it over to Mike and Iran, who will walk us through a demo of the product and then talk about some of the future releases coming right around the pipeline for us. So if we talk about the high level here, what we're really seeing is a new kind of focus around the 365 platform, really from an overall security perspective. And what that comes down to is, almost half of the organizations out there these days are really thinking about the challenges associated with deletion events, compliance events, all the intricacies that we've really kind of, call it mastered from an on-prem world, and applying those same concepts to the 365 space. From the specifics in the 365 world, thinking about it from the security perspective, like I talked about, there's just a massive increase in usage across the board. In this case, 74% of security professionals see that increase of data specific around email as a major problem, right? It's so much information moving in and out of the system. It really becomes difficult to wrap your head around. At the same time, 94% of security professionals are really thinking about this from a defense and depth perspective. Going back just a couple of years ago, the reason why you look at a third party like Rubrik is really from a compliance checkbox perspective. But now that landscape has completely changed, where you have to have this traditional defense and depth portion of the conversation and apply it to a SaaS platform like 365. One or two kind of quick examples of these threats as they play out, and really kind of what we're seeing from a trend perspective is around what I call the oldies but goodies, right? The traditional kind of attacks we see play out in the on-prem world really being tweaked and modified to be prevalent for the 365 space as well. Really kind of centered around the social engineering and brand impersonation aspect. At the end of the day, it's the identity authentication layers that are controlling your access to it. So the more efforts these threat groups can put into, in essence, tricking us into accessing the 365 subscription in a way that you may not have originally intended, it's kind of how we see the main kind of inroads into the 365 space. From there, it's all about gaining privileged access some form or fashion. A major trend around that is impersonating or adding access to third-party applications, which would grant a large, broad range of access into the 365 space, but by their nature don't have some controls that you would expect from like in a user control aspect, like multi-factor authentication as an example. So really popular target because there's that broad range of access, but not necessarily all these traditional security controls associated with like a user account. Similar fashion, gaining access to your credentials, some form or fashion, whether it is all the way up to the global admin level through things like that social engineering, or even more targeted at an individual user level. It's all about gaining that foothold into the 365 world. They can then lane and expand the overall access into the 365 system. So one of our customers, Payit, actually kind of experienced this in a real world perspective. We have Dan Galvin up here, who is their director of information technology. He had what I would say is one of those situations we all kind of worry about. He sees some kind of outage in his environment. Your first initial thought is something non-malicious. It was a power outage, but then you quickly realize, oh, this is a real-world ransomware attack. We have to respond to this in an adequate fashion. In their particular example, 365 was very heavily utilized across the board, just a plethora of data kind of underpinning their day-to-day business applications. So very quickly, it became apparent that they had to worry about not only the 365 aspect, but also all the other disparate services in their environment and being able to respond to those in a cohesive fashion. So really thinking about that from your incident response plan and readiness, how do I prioritize your 365 data? What is my important users? What are my important sites? How does that compare to maybe my on-prem VMware environment, different things like that? All of that goes into your incident response plan here. So in this specific example, Payit was able to recover their environment in less than 24 hours to get their critical systems back up and running, and then completing that entire response plan within a week as part of it. And 365 obviously was a major portion of that for them as well. One of the things we've seen a lot as based off of our ransomware response team internally here is how these attacks play out from a real world perspective. So I always describe it as their inroads into your environment really isn't too different than everything else you've thought of. Your core perimeter is being breached. They're going to gain access to an environment, traverse laterally, and somehow gain access to privileged access. It could be through through those enterprise applications, those third-party applications that we talked about earlier. It could be using the social engineering to gain access to your global administrators, but in essence, they're going to gain that foothold into your environment to use that to kick off the attack as it happened. So one of the most common questions I see is, how does ransomware play out here? How do I encrypt all data in 365? Because it's really hard to do that. So I always like to reframe it in more of a wiper attack, since that's how we see it play out in the real world. They'll first and foremost exfiltrate your data, something like, hey, I'll send up a command and a command and control server to say any email that comes in the system, send it to my Exchange system, or any file that is in OneDrive, how do I exfiltrate that to my file share that I'm controlling? From there, what they'll do is a mass deletion event and then go through and give you that nice ransomware note saying, hey, not only have I deleted all your data, I also have a copy of it. So they're really honing in on this double extortion use case that you kind of see being more and more popularized across the board. So at that point, the question really becomes how to respond to that using the native tools. Hands down, every single customer I talk to mentions the retention policies. It's kind of the default configuration that they have in place, and really kind of what they traditionally have gone to for one-off scenarios. I deleted an email or I deleted a file out of SharePoint. You can go through and use those retention policies to get that data back. The caveat here is these retention policies are then being used to actually attack your environment. So what Microsoft wants to do is give you the ability to delete data from your system. That way you don't have to worry about it from the compliance aspect, the legal aspect. So a great use case that is part of these retention policies. But really what we're seeing is those use cases being used to attack your environment. So instead of saying keep data around for 30 days, these threat actors will modify your existing retention policies and say, hey, do that for a day instead. So what that tells Microsoft to do is delete all data from your environment that is a day or older. Hard deletion event at that place. There's some additional security controls you can put on top of that, things like litigation hold or preservation lock, but also think of these as what they're designed to do, right? They're not these, ransomware prevention tools. They're really more about the compliance aspect. So it's quite literally, a button in the UI that you can use to turn off those litigation holds. So really, they're not really being used to prevent these attacks from playing out. What that ends up translation to is, your only recovery option is being able to pay your data and go through the traditional workflow that you would associate with that. Also really important to, before we move on to that aspect, to highlight that it's not just your 365 environment being compromised, it's the rest of your cloud environment, your rest of your data center workloads, all simultaneously being breached as part of the system. Before I turn it over to Rodney here, I always like to talk about actually when we first created this slide. We originally titled it as How Does Microsoft Look at Data Security? And from talking to Rodney and some of his colleagues on the Microsoft side, they kind of said, hey, we don't look at it data security. It's viewed in this data management context. And there's some key differences between those two use cases. So Rodney, maybe you could spend a couple of minutes here talking about the kind of high level categories you guys have here for the native tools.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Drew. At Microsoft, we provide a lot of tools for helping you manage your data. One of the first tools you want to invest in and look at is understanding your data landscape. Where do you have your data stored? Are things protected properly? Are they in the cloud or are they on premises? Understanding what data you have and where it is the first step to managing it. After that, you want to make sure that it's well protected. You want to make sure that it's encrypted at rest and in transit. You also want to make sure that the right people have access to the right data and that the data is marked properly so that they understand that. So is this internal only data? Can this be shared externally, etc.? Next, we have several tools that help you prevent data loss. Instead of having to worry about people sharing information, for example, in Teams, typing in credit card numbers or specific customer information that's important not to be shared. We have those also in Exchange and several other places to make sure that data is not overshared internally or externally. And then lastly, you govern the data. You want to make sure that you have retention policies in place, retention labels to understand what needs to be kept for compliance reasons, what is no longer required to be kept or is no longer valuable to the company and can be destroyed and deleted out of the data landscape. And all of this is to help you manage your data, because as part of the Microsoft 365 shared responsibility model, we at Microsoft will make sure that the infrastructure is up, the services are available. We will have multiple copies of your data so that if there's a localized outage or issue, there's redundancy. We'll also make sure the basic security functions and controls are there, making sure that people don't have access to this from external or across tenants. But as part of the shared responsibility model, the customers are responsible for keeping the data safe. We at Microsoft will keep the services up and running. The data is up to the customer. Business data residing in M365 on all of the various platforms, Exchange or OneDrive teams, the access controls to those, enterprise backups, data retention, full data ownership lies with the customers, because you know what's important to you. You know what you need to take care of for compliance and regulatory reasons, and make sure to keep safe in the event of an accidental or deliberate disaster. And advanced data security functions with incident responses and remediation is a big piece that Rubrik plays, and we're excited to partner with them to help them answer the customer's portion of the shared responsibility model.
That's absolutely right, Ronnie. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to review those native tools and really kind of how Microsoft has those fundamentally architected. So when we talk about these worst case scenarios and following an incident response plan, the questions we're hearing from customers really kind of fall into three broad categories. First and foremost, can I recover my data? What happens if these threat groups are specifically targeting those backups? What controls are in place to prevent those from being, deleted in a way that I wasn't expecting? In a similar fashion, what sensitive information was compromised? What regulatory bodies do I need to notify to let them know that this type of information was breached? Or, what of my customer data is being out into these global threat markets these days, and everything that goes into controlling those aspects? And then just at the same time, what is that scope? How do I specifically say this is the data that needs to be recovered, or this is the specific user that has sensitive information compromised? And then once those pieces are answered, what does recovery look like? And more importantly, in the context of 365, how do I do that quickly? And really kind of get into this holistic recovery plan and understand that my environment is back up and running in a way that I would expect, and doing it in a way that's cross-platform, cross-cloud, cross-SaaS, cross-on-prem, all kind of in a holistic picture as part of those workflows. And that's really where our data observability suite really comes into play. So this is something that you may be familiar with in more of the on-prem world, but we've extended this to support SaaS products like 365, where the input into it is your time series data that we can then ingest in the Rubrik platform and allow us to take advantage of a machine learning pipeline that provides additional information out there. What sensitive information was compromised? What data had, experience this mass deletion type of attempts? Or if I'm following a more traditional encryption workflow, what specific information is impacted by that, and how do I more surgically recover my data and get my environment back up as quickly as possible? So to kind of walk you through what that looks like from the product standpoint, let me turn it over to Mike, who will demo some of our new capabilities in this space.
Hi there, I'm Mike Preston, a technical marketing architect here at Rubrik. And today, I'm excited to show you some of the data observability enhancements we've made with Microsoft 365. As you may be aware, Rubrik has been enabling organizations to perform ransomware investigation and sensitive data discovery on a number of on-premises workloads. These capabilities are crucial in the event of a cyber attack. Knowing the exact scope of the attack, what files and folders have been affected, along with whether or not these files and folders contain sensitive data, is crucial in both proactively preparing for an attack and responding to and remediating the attack should it happen. We're super excited to extend support for these crucial security services to now include Azure VM workloads, as well as the Microsoft 365 SaaS platform. Attacks on M365 data are evolving, and brand new threats are constantly being discovered. Today, I want to give you a peek into just how Rubrik Security Cloud is helping organizations mitigate and respond to attacks on their M365 OneDrive and SharePoint data, using our anomaly detection and sensitive data monitoring and classification services. So let's dive in. We'll start here on our main Rubrik Security Cloud dashboard, where we get an at-a-glance overview of how our environment is performing. We can see just where our data is located, broken down by cloud, SaaS, and data center workloads. We also get a quick peek into what anomalies have been found by our anomaly detection service, along with if any sensitive data has been discovered within our protected workloads. Anomaly detection uses a machine learning model to determine not only file modifications, additions, and deletions, but it also signs for entropy and encryption. And this is now available to scan your M365 data. Let's head into our anomaly detection service and take a peek. Now, as we enter anomaly detection, we can see right away that we have some anomalies that have been identified. We can also see information on how our ransomware investigation pipeline is performing, as well as a nice time series overview of just when any of these anomalies have occurred. Drilling into our investigations, we can see that indeed one of our M365 OneDrive accounts, this Mike Preston account, has been identified as having an anomaly. We can see that a number of files within this account have been added, modified, and deleted, and ultimately a number of files have been marked as suspicious. On top of this, anomaly detection also has predicted the type of ransomware within the account. In this case, we're looking at the lockbit flavor. Now, we can drill into this account and browse through the folder structure, and as we do so, we can see that this is where most of the suspicious files have been detected, with most of them lying within this very small folder. Now, in less than a minute, we have performed one of the most complex processes that needs to take place after a ransomware attack. We've essentially identified the blast radius of the attack. At this point, we could execute a recovery of either the full OneDrive account or a surgical recovery of just those files and folders that have been affected, but often there's more questions that organizations want answers to before we begin recovering. Things like, do any of these exploited files and folders contain sensitive data? What classification of data did they contain? And has any of our customer data been exploited through this attack? Thankfully, Rubrik has the answers to these questions as well. Let's now move into our sensitive data monitoring and classification service. Here's my OneDrive account listed here again in the list, and just like before, we can drill into this folder structure and see where our sensitive data lies within that OneDrive account. In this case, this file shares folder. Here we can see that a number of files within the file shares folder did indeed contain sensitive information. We can see that we have a total of 75 sensitive hits, with the majority of them being flagged as USPII. We can also see the actual individual file names hosting that sensitive data. In this case, it looks as if an Excel spreadsheet containing some personal identifiable information exists within this account. By pointing out the sensitive data within our OneDrive accounts directly after the backups have been completed, customers can take valuable proactive steps to secure their accounts, mitigating the impact of any attacks should they actually occur, ensuring that sensitive data only exists within the OneDrive and SharePoint locations where it should be. And it's not just personally identifiable information that we scan for. As you can see, we have over 50 pre-built analyzers that scan for anything from financial information to credit card data to connection string information. And customers can easily add custom analyzers by defining either regular expressions or dictionary items. So the possibilities here are essentially endless. You simply create a policy containing the analyzers you wish to scan for, assign that policy to a OneDrive account or SharePoint site, and Rubrik will automatically scan each backup as they're taken, reporting to and alerting on any sensitive information found. Anomaly detection and sensitive data monitoring and classification provide key insights to organizations to better understand the scope of an attack, as well as the types of M365 data which has been infected. Without these key data observability features, organizations only increase their risk, both in their time to respond, but also in their time to recover. Enterprises around the globe rely on M365 for its ease of use, and Rubrik complements this, bringing zero trust data protection to protect your M365 data. Fast and efficient data remediation to ensure you can recover quickly, and now scanner-driven data observability to gain valuable insights from your data, both pre and post-attack. Thanks so much for watching.
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through that, Mike. And then actually, maybe we turn it back over to Aran here, who's going to talk about some of our new features and capabilities coming as part of our summer release, really focused around this resilience conversation and how do we ensure that your data is always available in these worst case scenarios.
Thanks, Drew. Well, besides new data observability like sensitive data monitoring and management that you saw in Mike's demo just now, we're also adding more data resilience features to build on what we already have in place. And as a reminder, what we have in place today is, and first of all, it's all about security and ease of use. So we have an air gap, we have immutability with worm storage to help further prevent data modification or deletion. We have retention locks, so no one person can change your SLA or delete the data. We have bring your own key to revoke access from Rubrik in case, for whatever reason, you suspect compromise. We have multi-geo support to help you meet GDPR and data locality regulations. And we have delegated permissions on top of existing RBAC controls to make things easy. In addition to all of these, we're now adding encryption rotation to help reduce your risk of sensitive data compromise, and export to PST to make exporting exchange data even easier. For fast and easy recovery, we're also introducing a new API for Microsoft OneDrive. This helps you streamline restores using PowerShell so that you could restore all users from an AD group at once in a mass recovery scenario. And we have APIs for the rest of the suite coming out shortly to make sure you can restore faster at enterprise scale. And with that, back to you, Drew.
Thanks, Ron. Really appreciate you taking a few minutes to review some of the new features that we're having in the summer release. I know you and the engineering team have been putting in a large amount of effort around that API. I am super excited to get that out into the field. It's personally what I am most looking forward to as part of those summer release features as well. So thanks again for everybody joining the call here. As you hopefully can see, we're doubling and tripling down on our efforts for cybersecurity in the context of 365 and really giving you an easy button to get your environment back up as quickly as possible in these worst case scenarios. If you ever need any additional information, the Rubrik.com site is always updated with our latest and greatest information. Great resource for you to go out and reference for future questions that may come up again. But otherwise, thanks again, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
All right, thanks, Drew, and thanks to the entire team there. That was great. Really interested in that upcoming summer release, and I do want to point out that we've got a poll up just about additional information that you can get from Rubrik, data sheets, technical white papers, customer case studies, personal demo, pricing details, all of these things. So we'll leave that poll up for a little bit to give everybody an opportunity to answer that. Also want to point out in the handout section of your console, there is a white paper from Rubrik. It's a Rubrik Guide to Public Cloud. It's a 7-pager. It's a technology overview about how public cloud works, how Rubrik works with the public cloud. Great resource there. Quick read. Highly recommend it. So check that out if you have a chance. And while I leave this poll up for everyone, I will go ahead and announce the next round of prize winners. So our next $300 Amazon gift card goes to Hamad Ali from New Jersey. And now I have not one, but 2 of the Apple iPad Airs to give away. And those are going to Cassia Trusty from Texas and Joshua Papillion from Louisiana. So the winners of the iPad Airs are Cassia Trusty and Joshua Papillion. So congratulations to everybody who just won. We will get in touch about claiming your prize. All right, and thanks to everybody who has answered the poll. Appreciate that. We'll just go ahead and close that down. And next, I did promise that we were going to have a little bit of fun today, in addition to today being informative. And so I'm bringing on Crash Plan, Riley Bruce, who's Director of Product Marketing there. But my colleague Jess is going to be on hand here to help Riley. So I'll let you see what that looks like. So I'm going to have them take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Actual Tech, for having us today. My name is Riley Bruce, and I am Director of Product Marketing for Crash Plan. I have been working in the backup space, helping folks make sure that they are protecting their data for over a decade at this point, which is kind of nuts. But today, we're going to talk about how you can stop making your disaster recovery process more difficult. We've already heard from a bunch of vendors at this point who are talking about disaster recovery and backup for things that are stored in places that humans aren't directly interacting with. However, too often we're seeing a large hole be created in these resiliency scenarios. That hole, namely, is the endpoint. So the place where data is actually being used. A lot of the time, this is the first question that we will get when we start talking about what it is that we do here at CrashPlan. Why is endpoint backup important? We'll go through some of the ways that folks believe that they are protecting their endpoints and protecting the data on their endpoints in an upcoming slide. But right now, we need to talk about why is the endpoint still important in 2023? And the answer, quite simply, is it's in the middle of everything. Your endpoint is the place where you are editing your data. It's the place where you download and interact with your data. It's the place where this presentation that you're looking at right now was created and then uploaded into this system, right? So everything is happening here, from cat photos to presentations to these sync applications to your CRM to all of the different places that you're interacting with data, but it all flows through the endpoint. And too often, we're seeing people try and solve this problem by plugging in with all of these different places, plugging in with this tool over here, plugging in with that tool, trying to back that up. And that just leads to unnecessary complexity. There is a place where all of this data lives that you could just grab it from there and seamlessly upload it and protect it for your business. So that's why we believe that endpoint backup is crucial, because the endpoint is central to all of the work that you do. Now, I'm going to talk quickly about some solutions that people are using to the data on the endpoint problem and protecting that data. Increasingly, these two on the left side are kind of collapsing, where people have historically thought that we're going to just say there's no data on the endpoint. Nobody's allowed to store anything here. If you store anything here and then the device fails, it's your fault, which is a great thing for the business until it's the CEO's laptop, or until it's your boss's boss's laptop, or it's the person who wrote all of your code and then didn't comply with the policy. So these solutions that are in place, specifically cloud collaboration and network shares, like I have on this slide, NFS was invented 40 years ago, and we're still having this problem. When it was invented, it was supposed to solve this so that, oh, nothing's going to be on the device that you're sitting in front of. Is that true for anybody who's watching this today? Because it's certainly not for me. Cloud collaboration is effectively just network shares and folder redirection with a nice new veneer on it, and it happens to be in the cloud, right? It's exactly the same tool. It's just not solving the backup problem. And I'll dig in a little bit more as to why it doesn't solve the backup problem in a couple more slides here. The last thing on here is SaaS tools. And yes, most of an organization's structured data, the source of truth anymore, should be in these databases, in your CRM, or in creative tools, right? Most of these solutions are backed up through some mechanism, although if you're thinking that your CRM is immediately backed up, I would encourage you to take a look at that. But the bigger issue is that while that data is backed up in its structured form, the majority of the time, it will still wind up being exported to the endpoint. I don't know about your salespeople, but the salespeople that I interact with on a regular basis love their CRM. However, anytime that they're actually interacting with things like customer lists, or they're trying to edit particular things, they will actually go through and they will export that to a CSV or an Excel document, and then they will interact with it directly on their laptop. So that then may or may not ever make it back up to the cloud. So all of these solutions to try and protect the business from the vulnerable laptop, right? I've got mine sitting right here, leave things to be desired. Specifically, when we're talking about cloud collaboration tools. And these vendors have done a really good job of trying over the last few years to increase basically their market presence by pitching to their users, hey, why don't you just use us as a backup solution for your end users? However, there are really 6 different ways that falls apart. The first one is the data for your users is not fully backed up. Even if you're using the sync app or you have folder redirection turned on with OneDrive, it's only going to back up data that is in these specific folders that you have designated need to be synced to the cloud. If a user happens to save something and it's in a different place, or it is not the right file type that is supported by one of these applications, it will not be protected and it can fail silently. The second issue here is that your user productivity is going to suffer. I know that I am in a place where if you can look at my face, you can probably assume that I am a millennial, and I am. So I grew up understanding technology better than I would say the average bear. However, even I find it difficult sometimes to remember to round trip things to Google Drive or OneDrive and actually save it in a place because, hey, it's already on my system. Why would I do that right now? Nothing's gonna, my hard drive isn't gonna fail today. Okay, great. I'm not gonna do that. So user productivity, if you're actually going to enforce this, if you're going to make people go through this process, that's gonna slow down, and you're also gonna have some morale issues. The next issue here is you can't meet compliance requirements. So a lot of these solutions do not have very specific versioning protection. And in many cases, those versions will age out. So if you ever need to produce or prove ownership of a particular file, you're in a situation where you don't have chain of custody, which all goes back to that first point. It's because the data wasn't fully backed up to begin with. This next one is my favorite because as a technologist, it is, to my mind, the most indisputable. The data that you store in a cloud solution is more vulnerable because you're taking what should be a copy and you are collapsing it into one logical version. What do I mean when I say this? A backup should be a secondary copy of your data. When we're talking about data that is stored in one of these cloud sync apps, it is effectively the version that is in the cloud that is the only one that exists. Because if anything changes that, if me and a colleague of mine are both working on the same presentation and they make a change, that will show up on my device. If I delete it in one place, it will be deleted everywhere. If an encryption event occurs, that happens everywhere. Versus a true backup solution, nothing happens to the data that's stored in the backup if something happens to the original copy of that data. The problem with these cloud solutions is you're collapsing it into there is only one copy. The next thing here, you can't restore data reliably. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to roll back a lot of versions, or there's been some sort of ransomware event in one of these cloud solutions. You basically have to go through, and in some cases you'll get lucky and you can do a folder at a time, but often you have to go file by file by file, version by version by version, doing this manually, which is just an absurd amount of time. The last thing here, it's more expensive. You are using something that should be secondary storage, that should be able to be a little bit slower as primary storage. So what that means is it needs to be very quick. It needs to be responsive. I don't know if you've ever tried to use one of these apps and it's doing the whole we'll stream the file thing to you and it takes 20 seconds for a file to open. That's infuriating, but it would be even longer if you were thinking of it as secondary storage. So those are some of the key reasons that these cloud collaboration platforms don't solve the problem for you. The next one, and you'll have to pardon me, I have my notes up over here and I keep trying to switch my notes instead of the actual presentation. But the next and the biggest reason is these cloud providers admit that they aren't backup. Microsoft specifically says you may not be able to retrieve your content or data. Google says we don't offer any services or warranties for data that is stored in our cloud. So if you look at the terms and conditions of these services that are being pitched as though they are backup for your endpoint data, you will find that they are very specifically indemnifying themselves against being thought of that way. So I hope that that was all helpful information. And I just want to bring it home here quickly by saying that a lack of a strong endpoint backup is going to be a bad time for everybody. These are just 4 examples. The number one, I don't know if you all are familiar with the ransomware attack that occurred at Maersk in, I think it was 2014, but a lack of a strong backup that they could easily restore from kept their services down and basically brought global shipping to a stop for weeks. That's not good. Similarly, Toy Story 2, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie, and I'm not trying to put Pixar on blast because they're great, but they had a policy that said nobody can have another copy of the data for this film. Makes sense, right? From a security perspective, you don't want to do that. However, somebody actually went in and accidentally deleted everything. So they were on this network file share and they did a sudo rmrf star, which for those of you who have ever worked in a Unix shell know how bad that would be. And it deleted everything. They thought everything was lost. However, they found out that someone had actually made a non-sanctioned backup. So it was on an external drive that had been taken home by someone on maternity leave, and they were able to get most of that data back. Dish Network, again, ransomware was a huge problem, kept their website down for weeks. I don't know if any of you are Dish customers. This was within the last year. And just yesterday, there was an article published about somebody who went through and years after they had left an organization still had access to the cloud platform and deleted all of the data. So they were let go and they were still able to delete this data, which then was deleted from everybody's systems inside that were still using that data. So all of that to say, this could be very bad. And I've done a lot of talking about like how this is not a good time for anybody. But how easy could it actually be? How much less difficult could this be making? Wait, that wasn't good. How much less difficult could it be for you and your organization? Okay, I like to use this analogy. It's like the difference between using a vacuum cleaner and using a Roomba. If you're using one of these solutions where it requires the human being to actually go out and save things in a particular location and do that on a regular basis, you're using a vacuum. You are not using technology to solve the problem. You are not doing something that is automatically going to do this save for you that is going to create the second copy. So it could be as easy as just letting your Roomba go and never create the second copy. So it could be as easy as just letting your Roomba go and never having to think about it again until, yeah, fine, it falls apart because you have to empty the Roomba, but it's fine. The analogy still stands before then. And that's the thing that we want to make clear here, is that it is very easy to just install this application. And then whenever you do need it, it's super simple to recover data. And this is where I'm actually going to bring Jess back on. And we're going to do a good old-fashioned demo versus laundry contest. I know that everybody should be able to, like, this is just a thing that's done, obviously.
Super normal, super traditional laundry versus demo competition. Yeah, we
so,
do this all the time in high school. It was just like a Friday night.
So what we're going to do Jess, I think you were going to tell people what we're doing.
Let me tell the folks what we're going to do, Riley, while you get us all set up. So, okay, I have my handy dandy basket of laundry here that I've been saving all week for this. Yeah, I've been getting ready for this. So this is all my nice laundry that we are going to fold. I am going to fold beautifully and neatly. And we're going to see if I can fold my basket of laundry faster than Riley can recover some data for you guys. So he's going to walk us through, and we'll see who's faster. The man versus machine is what it's a battle royale is what we're going with here. And I'm going to time it too. We'll get a timer up on the screen, but I'm going to time it so that I can see how fast we do this. Because I've never timed myself folding laundry. I have no idea how fast. I assume I'm amazingly fast at it, but let's see. Riley, are you ready?
We'll find out. I am ready when you are.
Okay. I'm going to give you a countdown. On your mark, get set, go.
All right. So the first thing that I need to do is I've received my new machine. This is as though it is brand new. And it already has the CrashPlan app installed on it because that's part of my organization's base image. Now, all I need to do is log in with my credentials here. And it helps if you can type correctly. It's much more stressful when, you're doing it for real here.
Yeah.
Yes, I am going to use Microsoft Edge to log in. Great. I'm already authenticated. Oh, I should have already been authenticated. This is where I get to yoink.
Okay. Wow, my heart is just racing right now.
Yeah, no, super exciting. This is the best television I think anybody has seen in a while. Everybody gets to see the handy dandy two-factor authentication, which everybody should have in place, but that's a different technology. Now I've got CrashPlan. I'm authenticated. It is on my brand new device. And it's asking me, is this a new device or am I replacing an existing one? So I'm going to choose that I'm replacing an existing one. I just need to go through these 3 quick steps. I'm going to start. I'm going to pick the device that I'm restoring from. I'm choosing that. And yes, I know that I am moving across platforms. That's okay. And now I just have to select my files. So I happen to know that there is a particular file that I was working on earlier that has to do with hairbrushes. It's something that is very important to business.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm going to search for this because I want to grab this file right now because it will allow me to get back up and running faster than if I tried to do my full restore. And it is sitting at loading. Great. So I've got, this is not a hairbrush. That is, in fact, the one that I want. So I can either select a previous version here. I can see all of my versions of my file that will pop up here in just a second. Or I can just download the most recent version as it existed on my system. I am waiting for this to load. This is the joy of letting Jess catch up to me.
You seem very relaxed. My heart is racing here, Riley. How are you so calm?
So I have this version right here that I can restore, and I'm going to have it go to my downloads folder, and I've got my file back pretty much immediately. So when I open this up, I can just double click on no hairbrush detected, and you'll see that, okay, there's no hairbrush in this image. It's a bunch of rakes. But that's one file. What if I need to restore my whole system? If I need to restore my whole system, it is just as simple. All I need to do is go through. I'm already in my users directory, so I will just select the whole thing. Click Riley Bruce, restore files. I can choose where I want it to go. I'm going to say desktop here, and if I was restoring to a similar system, also a Mac, it would be all good, and it would go to the original location. And now I am done.
What?
And someone else is not.
What?
So what I get to do is my favorite thing at the end of all demos, and that is find my handy dandy post-demo beverage.
Riley, I'm not going to lie to you, man. I really thought I was going to have to fake it. I was like, I'm going to have to slow down and let the demo catch up a little bit as I go through my laundry. I still have 3 shirts left and a pair of socks. Look at this nice Canadian plaid I've got here.
That is a lovely. See, we would call that buffalo plaid.
Yes,
But I don't know if that's we're on just on the south side of the border.
Just over the border there. All right.
Hopefully gives y'all a taste of how easy it is to restore. It's easy enough that I can do this in just a couple minutes, get the files back from a completely separate machine, and it's securely been backed up.
Riley, I feel like a little deflated. I think I need a beer now. That was I mean, cheers. Well, hey, at least I got my chores done. Now my laundry's done. I got all this time. I could just go back some files up. That, by the way, that took me 4 minutes and 45 seconds to finish my laundry. And I think the countdown timer that's running on you will tell us, I can't see it, but I'm sure that you were I think you were a good minute and a half, if not 2 minutes faster than me.
So there we go.
There we go. Well, okay. We do have some time for audience questions now. Should I switch over to camera 2 and we'll do some audience questions?
Let's do that. And here, I can throw this up. Thank you all. This has been wonderful, and we can open up the floor for some questions. If you ever need to reach me, my name is Riley Bruce. You can find me on the LinkedIn, or if you have questions specific to CrashPlan, you can just email us at info@crashplan.com. So with that,
I'm so frustrated with I even put in like socks to kind of make it hard, like little things. And then I put in some big cheater items, like big sweatshirts. I really need to work on my laundry folding. Well done. And let's get to some of these audience questions here. Riley, I'm having such a hard time focusing now. Riley, this is a good one. Is there a size where things break?
All right. So there are actually 2 different answers to that question. The first answer is no, there is not a size at which this breaks in terms of number of devices within the organization. We've been doing this since 2007. We think we're pretty good at it, but our largest customers have hundreds of thousands of devices that are deployed and managed through a single instance, and they are all backing up seamlessly to our cloud. With that said, it is also simple enough that if you wanted to do this on your own, you could just go to crashplan.com and you could use it for yourself. The other side of that question is there a size of data, so like an amount of data that's on an endpoint, that would break things? And the short answer is, for most people, no. If we're talking about you trying to back up a massive like Isilon or something like that, you're going to have a hard time. You should use a different product for that. But for anything where it's somebody's day-to-day laptop or desktop, no, there's basically no amount of data that you could send us that would be a problem.
Okay, great. No amount of data. How about no amount of laundry? Is there a limit to the amount of laundry you can fold?
Apparently we need to start that service because we could figure out how to speed that up too. So we'll do that in the future, certainly.
Also vacuuming. Yeah, I need you guys to back up my data, fold my laundry, and vacuum my clothes. You guys do all that, right? I knew you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
That segues nicely into my next audience question that I have for you here, Riley, because speaking of all the wonderful things you do, we have a question here. And you know what? This is a really important one because there's a lot of folks out in the audience that are, making decisions, looking at different vendors, different solutions, things that are going to work for their organization. So when they're making those decisions, when they're kind of weighing out which is going to be the right solution for them. Question here, what makes you different from anyone else doing backup? What would you say to that?
So the answer to that, there are 3 things. We bill ourselves as secure, scalable, and straightforward, right? So you already kind of saw the straightforwardness. It's very easy to restore. We talked about the scalability a little bit just a second ago. So thank you to whoever teed up that softball question. But the security is really the third thing, and it is the thing that particularly differentiates us in this market. We started as a consumer solution. So it was extremely privacy focused. It was for people who are tinkerers and technologists, right? And so because of that, we built it so that each user has their own unique encryption key. And that's a 256-bit AES key, which may or may not mean anything to you, but it's jargon. So that means it's real. But what that means in reality here is we're actually making it so that if, let's say, Jess and I were both using the solution and we were in the same organization, right? If my credentials get compromised somehow, somebody's able to log into my CrashPlan account, the only thing that they would have access to is data that was stored under my user, so that came from my devices. Most other solutions, when we're talking about credential compromise, when we're talking about things like that, will open the door to other things, either because they're using one key for the entire organization, because they're trying to, sell you on this ideal of we can only back it up once for every single device in the org, which isn't great when you need to restore because it's slow. Or just generally, they're trying to hand wave through security. So our product is built from the ground up to be secure and to enable privacy for the organization and for the individual. And that's really the thing that, from my perspective, differentiates us the most in this market.
Well, that's some good differentiators there. And Riley, we are very short on time, so I unfortunately am going to have to leave it there. But I want to ask you before you run away, if somebody out there is all pumped up, wants to get into CrashPlan, they want to do their own laundry versus data recovery experiments at home, what would you recommend to get started? What's their first step?
Well, the first step would be to start a TikTok trend. No,
Yes.
the first step is actually just go to crashplan.com and you can either start a trial there, you can interact with us, or if that seems like too much, you can really just use the email address right here on this slide and email me, info@crashplan.com, and we will make sure you get routed to the right place.
Well, that's perfect. I think, TikTok trend is the obviously the correct way to go. But failing that, I hope you guys all get a demo set up. And hey, show up for the demo with your own basket of laundry and challenge your CrashPlan rep to a laundry off and see how it goes. That's my challenge to all of you. And if anyone wants to race me in the future, I'm down, I'm in, I'm primed and ready. And I know Riley would love to race all of you at home. So thank you so much, Riley. This has been genuinely a lot of fun, and I hope we get to chat again soon.
Awesome. Thank you all, and everybody have a great day.
All right. Thanks, guys. That was fantastic. It was really fun to watch you race. And as we wrap up here, we do have a poll for any items that you would like from CrashPlan. And in addition to those, don't forget about your handout section where there is a 2-pager PDF overview how CrashPlan protects business data with continuous automatic backup. So you can check that out there. And I'm going to go ahead and leave this up for everybody to fill out while we do our final prize drawing of the day. So our third gift card today goes to Gil Campos from Pennsylvania. So that's the $300 Amazon gift card. And we have 2 more iPad Airs to give away. One of them is going to Leah Jennings from Indiana. And one is going to Rico Lujan from New Mexico. So Leah Jennings and Rico Lujan. So believe it or not, that brings us to the end of our prize drawings. Now, we do have 3 of those best question cards to give away. And there were so many questions that came in today, so many great questions. So we've got a lot to pick from. We will be getting back to our 3 winners for each of the, one for each of the sessions. So thanks to everybody who submitted questions. Those really do make our events go, and we really appreciate when you share the questions that you have, because it makes the conversation so much richer. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and close down that poll. And I just want to quickly call out the ransomware.org site. But just, one last time on behalf of all of us at Actual Tech Media, I want to thank everybody for attending this event today, and I want to thank our participating companies for being here. We had, of course, Veeam, Rubrik, CrashPlan, so much innovative stuff that we heard about. We heard about stuff that's coming up this summer. We heard about, we saw demos that are faster than at least Jess can fold her laundry. And we heard about some really interesting stuff in the cloud maturity framework. I know I learned a lot today. I hope you did as well. And with that, we're gonna wrap up. But thank you so much for attending, and I hope you have a great day.